And they come to church expecting to find that acceptance, that kindness, that mercy to be given to them by people in the church.
Who may be like me, where it's just like, they do something, and then there's that conflict, and they're like, okay, so if I say something that doesn't agree with a Christian, they go off at me and they're very upset with me, and I'm kind of like disowned by them. Is that what God's like with me when I'm not sure about something and I question it?
But there should be a deeper reason to life. So why God, and why is it for you?
Just imagine how many people in the church have been hurt by religious men. Very individuals who are meant to be representing God, and in the time of their greatest need, they're being brushed aside.
Hello, and welcome back to the Hopeless Podcast. My name is Jason, and today we've got our whole team back together. We've got Joseph.
Hey.
Delphia.
Hi.
And we've got a special guest today. His name is Bruce.
Hey everyone.
Welcome, Bruce. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Fantastic. I'm doing very well. It's good to have you on. I've been trying to get you here for quite a long time, and it's really nice that you can actually make it and sharing this podcast experience. So thank you very much for coming. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves, like what are you passionate about and your ministry?
I'm passionate about, other than the Bible, really helping people out. And at the moment, I've been just working with a ministry doing health presentations. We run a 10-day program where we invite health guests to experience healing for their various ailments.
Oh, wow. Okay. That sounds like something right up my street. I love the sound of that. Well, today, I'm glad that you can join us in discussing our topic for today, which is the good atheist. And you probably can sort of guess what that's about. But before I go into it, what do you think of the topic? Like, what sort of things come to mind when you think of that? Delphia.
I don't know. It's certainly different when, you hear like the good atheists. I guess there are good atheists out there. Like, it's probably not that so much as me thinking, oh, they're all just bad atheists. It's like there's a lot of nice atheists out there. But I guess that's just my point. I'm kind of just like chill with it, not to either way. Like, yes, we've got differences, obviously, very big ones.
Okay. How about you, Joseph?
For me, it would probably be a bit of both. Like, it depends where you're looking from, where's your perspective and what angle you want to come from, where it's like, okay, if you're an atheist, you're going to be like, oh, you get a door knocker that wants to talk about Christianity and things. And that atheist that opened the doors be like, oh, I don't go to church anymore because I know those people that go to the church. They're hypocrites. They say this and that and this and that. But actually, I know they don't live by it. I know they're not true. So many atheists, in their perspective and point of view, are right and quite right. That, yeah, not many good people here. But then as a Christian point of view, you can say, okay, as a Christian, you're trying to do right by the law and by God. So every day is a battle and a struggle for forgiveness and to better yourself, to be right for Jesus. So, and then as an atheist, and there's no God as a central figure and no law to mirror you to see if you're doing wrong or if you have dirt on your face, basically, that there's no reference point. So I can see both angles, but I guess since it's a Christian podcast channel, we can kind of see in the point of view of a Christian that, atheists are the ones that we need to are commonly looked at as not so good.
All right. And finally, Bruce, any thoughts on the topic?
I think it's a very interesting title. I'll definitely, if I was listening to the podcast myself, I'd be drawn to it. Into what is this all about, the good atheist? And I guess like Joseph said, it depends what perspective you're in. I guess if we had an atheist on the podcast, they might say all atheists are good. What do you guys feel about that? Yeah, so I'm definitely keen to hear some of the points we.
Well, another person might say, let's say one of those the religious fanatics, or maybe a Muslim person who would say that the only good atheist is the dead atheist, you know. But before we get into the story, let's look at how, you know, we can define atheism, because some people go, well, there's no such thing as an atheist, because they say that atheist is someone who does not believe in God, or someone who says that there is no God. So if you look at the definition, someone says there is no God, first you have to produce a proof that there is no God. And no atheist has been able to do that, to produce proof that there is no God. So an atheist, well, they might know that there is a God, but then they do not believe in God. And I think that in itself is an interesting thought, because does that make that person an agnostic then? And here it says that there's a lot of people who are agnostic. They're surprisingly knowledgeable about a lot of religions. Okay, and so they know that they know about these religions. They just choose not to believe. They choose not to believe. They choose not to follow any sort of religion. So with that said, then, oh, sorry, Joseph.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to your point there with like atheist. Like I remember learning this a couple of years back, and theist is God, and atheist is like, if you split it to A and then theist, it's without God. So really you need to, people who don't believe there's God, so you need to prove that. So you know that it's a bit of a misconception and Christians face is like when you're trying to prove the Bible and you want to try and prove God, but they don't understand that at the same time, the person who says that the person who claims that they're an atheist needs to prove that there is no God just as equally as they point to you and say, prove God. So there's an equal, yeah.
Right. So that's a kind of a little bit challenging then, because if I've never had an atheist prove that there is no God, you know. So, but we're looking at the agnostic and the atheist then, in that sense. Neither of them believes or disbelieve in a God or religious doctrine. So they believe that they're there, and a lot of them are aware of this. And so the story we're going to look at today is found in Luke chapter 10, verse 25 to 37. And I believe, Delphia, if you could read that for us, that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, no worries. So Luke chapter 10, starting at verse 25, I'm reading from the Good News translation. It says, a teacher of the law came up and tried to trap Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to receive eternal life? Jesus answered him, what do the scriptures say? How do you interpret them? The man answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. You are right, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But the teacher of the law wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus answered, there was once a man who was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when robbers attacked him, stripped him and beat him up, leaving him half dead. It so happened that a priest was going down that road, but when he saw the man, he walked on by on the other side. In the same way, a Levite also came there, went over and looked at the man, and then walked by on the other side. But a Samaritan who was traveling that way came upon the man, and when he saw him, his heart was filled with pity. He went over to him, poured oil and wine on his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own animal and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the keeper. Take care of him, he told the keeper, and when I come back this way, I will pay you whatever else you spend on him. Jesus concluded, In your opinion, which one of these three acted like a neighbor toward the man attacked by the robbers? The teacher of the law answered, the one who was kind to him. Jesus replied, you go then and do the same.
Mm.
Um, just listening to the story, there's a few things that sort of jumped into my mind, like, just the questions that were asked from both sides. There were questions that were asked from both sides. But before we sort of, yeah, Joseph, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, my version at the end, it says, he said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. So I like the word mercy than, yeah, because it has a bit more oomph to it, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So the question was, who is your neighbor? And he answered rightly, like, the one who showed mercy or the one who showed kindness. There is an act, there's an act going on here, that there's some action from the true neighbor. But before we get into the story and look at these questions and everything, let's look at the historical sort of context of this this story. So the story in itself, right, is the story of Jesus. He's telling this story. But do you know much about the relationship that existed between the Samaritans and the Jews?
A little bit.
A little bit. How about you, Bruce? Any?
Yeah. Well, from my understanding, the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritan was a very hard one. And I was doing a little bit of reading actually before the podcast, and it shows that it not only stemmed from the split of Israel into the northern and the southern kingdom, but it was also due to the intermingling with the Syrians. So the northern kingdom, where the Samaritans come from, this hatred and animosity that the Jews had to the Samaritans came as a result of their intermingling with the Syrians and their gods, and so they were almost pantheistic after that.
So they were intermarrying with these Assyrians. We find that in Deuteronomy chapter 7, and they were considered to be half breeds. In other words, they were not pure blood, which in itself is a derogatory term, isn't it? Half breeds. They were considered to be dogs. And one other story was that woman that came to Jesus for healing, and she herself says, even the dogs eat the crumbs from off the table, the Assyrian ladies. So we can see that there were definitely cultural differences, some deep-rooted cultural differences that go way, way, way back, some hate or some animosity, may even say some cultural racism there, if that's the term. But so what do you think this main sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. I was just thinking, the person that hated most in this story, in the cultural and historical setting, was the hero. But the person that they most respected was actually the villain of the story, from the perspective of the listeners.
Okay. Can you expand on that a little bit?
So pretty much the hero there in the story was the Samaritan, the half-breed, like you were saying. So it's weird that, like, the hero in Marvel movies and all these is usually like this nice polished up character. He's there's some heroes that are not that do come from humble beginnings and things like that, but more often than not, usually to make a story a good story, you take someone who's accepted in the culture and the time, and that one would get the most love ultimately. So
wow, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful point. I think I'd like to springboard off that. Delphia, could I hand that first?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just looking at what an author has written about it is that the Jews hated the Samaritans that much that it came to the point that in this story, the author goes into further detail, and they said that when the priest and the Levite looked at the wounded man, they couldn't tell whether he was a Jew or not. And they thought he might be of the Samaritans, and that's why they turned away. So they would leave someone to die rather than help them if they were
just because they were Samaritan. Yeah.
Yep.
Because they were Samaritan. And that's actually quite sad, you know, to the point where this person is no longer considered to be human, you know, don't deserve the same kind of, whoever this person was, if they were a Samaritan, they don't deserve the same kind of treatment as normal human beings. And I think that's key as well, because when you look at, like, you know, the point that Joseph made, basically, there is definitely a rift that have existed, and what we see is further exploration of that rift in this story. And Jesus is pointing out just exactly where the mindset of the people were, you know, in that time period. Bruce?
I was just thinking of just going on with the point that Delphi was saying as well, that it seems to me when I read the story that this man had said that he was going from Jerusalem to Jericho. And in my mind, I just thought, like, maybe he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And I just think to myself that the priests and the Levite, they walked by him. And
the way that this man would have been, you know, would have been dressed. But the thing is, he was stripped of his raiment, you know. He was beaten. He was so badly accosted that he was unrecognizable. And maybe that's the case with some people that come into our churches, you know. They have been beaten so badly by the world and by Satan that they walk into the church with earrings and their clothes look like it's been torn, the bits and pieces missing. And they come to church expecting to find that acceptance, that kindness, that mercy to be given to them by people in the church. But instead, what they get is, you know, look at your face, you got all this makeup on your face, you know, you got all this jewelry, you know, we don't accept this jewelry, we don't accept this short skirt, or we don't accept these tight pants for men, you know. And so they go out there into the world looking for the same, and they find it in different places. Joseph?
Yeah, and just going off that, those same people that are atheists and come from that pathway, they actually use like the word Good Samaritan. They know of that phrase, the Good Samaritan, because it's funny because people who are not Christians still say that phrase. Oh, he's such a good Samaritan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they reject the teachings of the Bible.
All right, that's interesting. Delphi, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that how the Jews were like a very special people, how they had been like set apart by God to go and show him to others.
Yeah.
And this is how they treat one of their fellow human beings, and then who was one of them.
Yes.
Anyway, but then are we like that as well? Where it's just like, you know, we're all Christians. Where is it that, as you were saying, other people who are coming to the church, maybe for the first time, or maybe they've been coming a long time, but nonetheless, something has happened to them, and we go, I'm not sure about you. Like, did you have to come here? Like, I think I'll just like pass you by. Maybe I'm like the Levite. I'll have a good look at you and have, you know, a bit of pity, but I won't take any action about it. I won't go and like take you under my wing and just like nurture you back to health. Anyway, and it's just like, am I showing that? Because as a Christian, I'm supposed to be representing God. What I do to other people is showing them what God is like.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people are getting a very bad impression of God because of a Christian who may be like me, where it's just like, you know, they do something, you know, and then there's that conflict, and they're like, okay, so if I say something that doesn't agree with a Christian, they go off at me and they're very upset with me, and I'm kind of like, disowned by them. Is that what God's like with me when I'm not sure about something and I question it? Does God just disown me every time?
Yeah.
So I think that is very important to keep in mind, especially for us Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in Luke 6:36, right, it has this phrase, it says, be he merciful, just as your Father in heaven is merciful. And I think
Amen.
Joseph mentioned that, like, you know, or kind, be kind as your Father in heaven. I like the mercy bit as well, because, you know, it shows a kind of part of the character that is willing to sort of, even though someone shows you hurt or harm, or these guys have done all this kind of stuff to us, we're willing to overlook that for their sake, overlook it, because that's the character of God, you know. And Joseph mentioned something again about that, the underdog. You know, he didn't really use the word underdog, but he says, you know, the hero of the movie, the hero of the movie is always someone who's buff, you know, who looks the part, beautiful, with a cape or whatever it is. You don't expect it to be someone who's, you know, raggedy tag, skinny old fella, you know. And that's exactly what Jesus was, because he came along, right? And he wasn't what they looked for, you know, in a Messiah. As a matter of fact, they were looking for a Messiah who was just gorgeous, you know, and who was going to ride in on a stallion or 10 stallions or whatever it was. And here he was riding on a donkey, you know. And it's interesting that that story had the donkey in there. He put this man on his own donkey as well, you know. He's like, he might be humble, he might look like because I don't know if you know this, but they say that a donkey is a cross between a horse and or is that a mule? Mule is a cross between a horse and donkey.
Mules,
But
yeah.
that's which way. You know, this donkey looked like a bit of a half breed as well. You know, probably was was not amazing to look at, but still was able to do the kindness and have a part in the act of mercy that that the story brings out. And I wanted to just, you know, look at the modern day equivalent here. What can we see from this story that you would say, you know, is like a cultural modern day equivalent? Is there like a group of people that are considered to be no good or useless, or, you know, from a cultural perspective, or, you know, and genuinely despised? Is there someone like that? Yeah, Joseph.
I think it's a bit hard that we can pick out certain people or race or something like that without getting a big whiplash or being burned for saying there is this. And it could be a fact that we say, okay, there's this type of people and they're looked down upon from this perspective. But from, like, I think a smart way of looking at it and not getting that whiplash is that me, myself, as a person could be that Samaritan. Like, all these people around me think they are somebody, and then because I'm trying to help in this particular way or do something for someone, or when I walk this way, they want to turn around and walk on the other side of the street. And that could be true. Like, maybe I'm walking, doing my shopping every week, and I don't know, there could be this grandma that's just like, oh, him, I'm going to go this way. So I don't know. There could be people in my life, but I'm willing to say myself that I'm not perfect, and I think that there's people that might think of me that way. So
Yeah, I was more sort of looking at the person who was down in the ditch, the one who's been accosted by robbers, you know. And what we'd have to say is that, look, when the robbers come, they would notice someone that maybe he was well off. Maybe he had a bit more bling on than he was supposed to, you know. Maybe he attracted the robbers in a particular way. But at the same time, that person was someone who was in need, you know. You could say, my neighbor is someone, whoever who is in need is my neighbor, you know. And whoever does this act of mercy or kindness is a good neighbor. And so we're looking at who in our world today would be in that position of need, you know, who wanted someone to sort of, and you're completely right. The old lady, they're definitely in need. They're in need of someone helping them from time to time. People who are, you know, widows. The Bible talks about the widows. The Bible also talks about the strangers, you know, those people who maybe they've come to the country as an immigrant, maybe they're struggling to make ends meet. Maybe they're the homeless people, but whichever situation or position they're in, they've obviously been beaten up by the devil, and to a certain extent that they're pretty much helpless in a ditch. So yeah, that's what I was trying to find out there. Who would you say would be that person? And it could be anyone. Yeah, Joseph.
I was just thinking, ultimately, it's the concept of love. So you love your neighbors as yourself. And then I think you can find it's basically the golden rule, and people know about that, like treat somebody as you would treat yourself. But actually, I think it's like I even learned it when I was studying the Good Samaritan story, is like it's actually rooted, and the essence is from like the Old Testament, and you can find that in Leviticus 19 verse 18, and that's where the golden rule actually comes from. But people think, oh, it's from Jesus or something like that, but yeah, Jesus got it from there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, Bruce.
I think it's very interesting. I think some practical things that we see all around us as to those who are in need. We see them everywhere, really, isn't it? That because I work with so many individuals who struggle with mental health, so it's something very close to me. And I find that a lot of individuals who struggle with depression, stress, and anxiety, they feel like the outcasts of society. They really do feel like there's no one who understands them, no one cares, and sometimes they're treated as such. And it's very sad, oftentimes, that even church members treat them in such a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just those people who are considered to be culturally different, but those who are even financially oppressed. I heard a story this week about a father who actually committed suicide because he couldn't provide for his children. He was in debt, a lot of debt, and even the loan that he applied for wasn't successful, and he thought that kids would be better off without him. Delphia?
Yeah, I was just like, since I've started working now, like I'm being in hospitality and stuff like that, you see a lot of different people, and it's just like, I don't know, for me it's just like the people who I see as like being harder to help, like when I'm one of the Levites, where it's just like, yeah, I care about you, but I would probably walk by on the other side, would be like the bogans or rednecks. It's just like, a lot of the time it's just like, okay, you're rough and rugged, and probably don't give a damn about me helping you, okay? And you're cussing all the time, and it's just like, those people are the ones that I would be like, yikes, I've got to help you. And sometimes it's the rude people, okay? Sometimes it's like these old people, this, that, and the other. They can be young, old, middle-aged, whatever, but then they're just super rude. And it's just like this, that, da, da, da. And it's just like, I'm supposed to love you. How do I do that? Yeah. So that's a struggle I have, where it's just like, how do I love the bogans or rednecks and those rude customers, anyone? Like, how do I love them as a Good Samaritan, as the Levite and priest should have?
Yeah. We're coming to that. Hold that question. That's a really good question, actually. I think we should definitely cover that. Bruce?
Just real quickly, I'm very sorry. That Delphia just reminded me. There's a quote that I read, and it goes something like that we often despise and often reject the very people that God is trying to draw to himself.
Wow.
And a lot of the times it's the very people that we find on the streets that look rough and then look very scary. Those are the very people that we often find that God is trying to draw to himself. Think of Nebuchadnezzar, a man who was just about to kill every wise man in Babylon. It wouldn't been a pleasant thing to see him in his rage, but God was trying to draw him closer.
Yeah.
to himself. And yeah, so it's often easy really to bypass these very people, isn't it?
Yeah.
It may be that God is drawing them closer to himself.
Yeah, that is so true. And to be quite honest, the issue of the person in the ditch there is one of everyone's story. We can all say that we are, to some extent, been ended up in that ditch because the robbers that came, and the Bible says that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Mentioned that in the last podcast. And so here he is now. He's the one who's stealing, killing, and destroying. And we've all been affected by it through sin, right? But the question is, right, do we see others that are in need, like, of salvation, others that are in need of healing, others that are in need of comfort? And to be quite honest, this is the key point here, is that we should all be looking for those people that are suffering, struggling, or in need, so that we can benefit them as the Good Samaritan. Joseph?
Yeah, and I think like ultimately it comes back to that question. It's like, why did the lawyer or the I forgot what the other versions say, but the person who studies the law, why did he say, who's my neighbor? So for what purpose? Was he saying that to say, okay, oh, I can do the right thing, but like tell me who, like tell me who exactly, and I'll draw that line. I'll keep that circle of influence exactly how it is, because then I can actually achieve that. If you can tell me where, I can achieve that.
Yeah, he was trying to justify himself by saying that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's the other one, to keep the pool smaller, to minimize the bar.
Yeah.
But who's my neighbor? Like, because to lower the standards, to make it easier, so.
And oftentimes we've got this bias as well, that we want to just treat the people that we know, well. We have got a little circle of people that we can treat well. But, it really broadens the playing field here, because, your neighbor is just anyone that's in need, and anyone that actually, is willing to offer help or give mercy where mercy is needed, or kindness where kindness is needed. We can all be a good Samaritan by giving kindness. I think that's kind of where, where we see that the title of the Good Atheist, because they've got people who have gone out of their way to show kindness to someone, not necessarily from a religious background. It didn't have to be from a religious background. You may understand this, but I just want to throw something out there that, because it says that, love is awakened by love, right? And love actually manifests itself through kindness. And so if there is someone out there that's doing good, they would have had to be lit by Christ. They had to be lit by that love from God. So you don't just do good things, because the Bible says there's nothing good that lies in us. So the good atheist has to have that goodness coming from somewhere. You see what I mean? Elfia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to go and mention, you said something there, how everyone who needs help is our neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
But then I want to go, Joseph was saying about how the lawyer wanted to make his pool smaller. I want to go and like break up the barrier even more and build more bridges instead of barriers, and say, is there anyone though who doesn't struggle and is in need? There's no one, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though there's some people like, I'm fine. Okay.
I'm good. Everyone says I'm good.
I'm good.
That's right.
Because it's a social standard.
No, I'm good.
If we say I'm not the best, okay, well shut up and deal with it. I can't help you. Yeah. And it's gotten to that where it's just like, no, you're not allowed to tell us your problems. No, you're just going to get like a cold front. We don't want to hear about it. Mm-hmm. So then a lot of people go, okay, well, I won't tell people about it. But every single person has some sort of struggle, whether they're open about it or closed about it. There are people who appear fine, but in reality, they are struggling the most.
True. That is so true.
So everyone is our neighbor and everybody needs help.
You know, like it reminds me of the comedian, that comedian that also killed himself as well. One of my favorite comedians. He was fine. Everyone is fine, you know, until like,
Oh, that's my favorite comedian. I know who you're talking about.
yeah, the one I can't remember his name. Even
Oh, I can't wait. Give me a second, I'll remember it. But you go on, go on.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, I can remember the show, but anyway. All right, so let's take it home, right? Let's look at the personal application here now. What we learned from this? What can we bring home? Joseph.
Robin Williams, that's the name.
Robin Williams, yes. Personal application, what can we take from this? Is there more to the story? Now we've understood that our neighbor can be anyone, right? Anyone in need, anyone that wants to show kindness. Actually, before we do, like, there's this text in Matthew chapter 12, verse 30, right? Where Jesus says, he who is not against me is with me, right? There's no like three sides to this whole debacle. There's only two sides. One is that you're completely against God and you're fighting against God actively, or you're actually working with him. So the good atheist here could actually be doing the work of God. This is what the Good Samaritan was doing, right? He was working with God, even though they may not have considered him to be anything worthy, a half-breed or whatever it is. He was still working with God. So how can we like make this more personal, and what can we take away from this? Yeah.
Just to follow up on that point, I think that mentality still is like the us and them mentality is still prevalent in today's society. Because like if I'm like, for example, there's that dilemma of a particular race. It's like, oh, you don't understand because you don't have the same blood. You don't know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That still is prevalent in our society.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, oh, okay, you're only half of the blood. So you only maybe know half. You don't know the full story. Don't even speak because you just don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, recently we've had the whole vaccinated versus unvaccinated thing just created even bigger divides. You know what I mean? Who's my neighbor? Well,
Black Lives Matter as well.
Black Lives Matter, massive. And
Yeah.
and the other big thing that's dividing people is the whole climate change thing. But you know, while there's divisions being created, we should be, as Delphia said, building bridges. More bridges need to be built. All right, let's gather your final thoughts on the subject. I think this has been a really good podcast. Maybe start with Delphia. That's not too much. What are your final thoughts?
I guess like just learning to go and have that love that God has toward each and every one of us, so that we can go and represent him properly, being ambassadors of the cross. And it's very hard. I can't say that it's easy to love everyone, especially like if they reject you or they cuss and swear at you, like chase you down the street, whatever. Because, you know, that's happened before with me, going and trying to share the gospel, and then someone's just been so upset, has come after us. Anyway, it's just like they're a wounded man lying in the gutter. I'm supposed to be a good Samaritan. I'm supposed to be a Levite who cares and who does something, not just who looks on. I'm supposed to be a priestess who truly represents God in everything, because we are now a chosen generation and we're priests to God. So I think that's really important for all of us to take into consideration, is that, you know, yes, those people who are hard to love, like we somehow have to love them. And it's only through God that we can do that. And I mentioned that, I believe I mentioned that sometimes when people like come to us and they're talking to us, like especially us Christians, and we're very protective of, you know, we believe this, and if you don't believe this, you know, da 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 da. Anyway, and I read something which says that how Paul went and gave his final thoughts when he wrote what is now known as the love letter, which is the love chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Yeah. Anyway, and in the end he says the greatest of the final three, which was faith, hope, and love,
Yeah.
the greatest of these was love. And if someone comes to us and we have like a difference of belief, don't make that what stops you from being a good Samaritan to them. That, oh, because you don't believe what I believe, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Or if we were, this author went and put it as, if we had to choose between keeping like all the doctrines or loving people, we should go with love before we go with the doctrines. And they're like, fortunately, we don't have to, it's not an either or predicament, but that just shows how important love is. And that love is what we've got to keep sight of, especially in this world where love is growing cold.
Wow, beautiful. Joseph, your
My final thoughts in conclusion. Let me try and wrap it up really quickly. Well, I see that at the beginning of the story there, it was quite a very transactional mentality. So the lawyer goes and approaches and says, okay, so how do I inherit eternal life? If I do this, can I get that? This and that, us and them mentality, this and that mentality, right? So I kind of wanted to, and also you can see in another story of like the rich young ruler, he also does the same thing. Okay, I've done this, can I get that? This, that mentality. So we acknowledge that God is all powerful and he can give you anything materially, basically. After you go to heaven, there's the streets of gold, you get the crown, you get the mansion. But I know we desire, or people desire materialistic things. So beyond gold, beyond mansion, beyond this and that, why God for you? Why God? Okay, yeah, it's good. You're going to get all this and that and this and that, but there should be a deeper reason to life. So why God and why is it for you? That's what I wanted to say just there for that little part there. And then in wrapping up a little bit further is that law equals love, but who is my neighbor? So if God is love, you should be able to, shine the light, and you're the lesser light and he's the greater light. So you need to, direct people's attention to him instead of yourself, because I know as a person, I'm not perfect, no matter how hard I try. And it's not so much like salvation by works, but I just wanted to lift up Jesus and God and love. So who is my neighbor? It's everyone that you can help.
Thanks, Joseph. Bruce?
I believe as Delphia and Joseph have beautifully brought out is the principle of love. And I guess when I just thinking about it now, it seems like the Levites and the priest actually had a wrong understanding of what love is, probably a more modern day definition of love where it's based on feeling. But we're told that love is a principle, and that is to mean that it doesn't change regardless of the circumstance. And so that is when someone is in need, regardless of how they treat you, regardless of what they say to you, regardless of even if they appreciate it or not, we ought to help them and we ought to be there for them. And it's such a wonderful principle. And I believe we see this especially in the life of Christ. He helped people not just for them to follow him, but he simply helped them the mere fact because he loved them and he actually cared for their needs.
Yeah, wow, it's beautiful. And I think that kind of sums up the general thought that I'm getting as well. Because when Jesus spoke to the rich young ruler, he told him about the commandments. Go and keep the commandments, But he was very selfish. He was very rich and he was very self-focused. And it's the same with this lawyer. He told him, keep the commandments. Again, the answer is the command, because the commandments are love. It's love to God and love to your fellow man. This is how it's broken down. But he wasn't having an issue with love to God. He had an issue with love to his fellow man. And, I heard the part of the story today about someone a captor was chasing this man and he was running over an ice. I don't know if you've heard this story before. And the captor fell in the ice. And the man who was being chased saw that he fell in the ice and he was struggling to get out. And instead of just carrying on thinking, this guy's trying to catch me and put me in prison, he actually went back and helped him to get out of the ice.
Wow.
And, you know, the captor, he turned around and imprisoned this guy and killed him. You know, even after he saved him from the ice, he killed him. And that's what Jesus is. Jesus was the one trying to save us from the destruction, save us from, and turned around and killed him. I do as well. But, you know, he still loves us. And that's the same sort of love that we need to exemplify. We need to show that same mercy, that even though people treat us badly, say wrong things, and, you know, our act is to be kind, to be merciful, and to be loving to them. So that's what we got from that, you know, and anyone can do that as long as you have, you know, that connection with God, and God wants to connect with each and every one of us to work that goodness through us, and so that we can be all, you know, good Samaritan in this world that we live. So I want to take the time to give you, you know, thanks for, you know, for joining us. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Delphia. Thanks for your thoughts. And thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Delphia.
Thank you, everyone.
And I want to thank people who sponsor us as well, Avon Valley Seventh-day Adventist Church. And you can find them on the net, avonvalleysda.org.au, and also on YouTube, Avon Valley SDA YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and connect with us. You know, tell us your thoughts, give us some comments, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, guys.
See ya.